Well, Britain will finally be leaving the European Union in just under 11 hours. It's taken 3 years, 2 general elections and the resignation of 2 prime ministers. The UK's departure from the EU marks the end of years of negotiation and political tussling. At stake, Britain's future relationship with the Union, especially on trade and immigration. But on the ground, no major changes are expected, at least not yet. The UK now enters a transition period where most EU rules will continue to apply until the end of the year. Now, in London and Brussels, supporters of the Remain and Leave camps have gathered to mourn or celebrate.
What's done is done. You know, we need a bit of unity. And I think all this has done is divide the country. It'll be some time before we realise actually what this all means. And sadly, the people who voted for it, the swing voters, I think are going to be the ones who are worst affected by it. But that won't happen for another 3 or 4 years. It's a very sad day.
To be honest, I think it's been going on for so long now. I just wanted to see it done with. All the palaver and the rigmarole going on in Parliament was just, it was getting too much, really.
Well, we want to get a couple of perspectives now. In a moment, Lucy Hough will join us from Brussels. But first, Ollie Barrett is in London. Ollie, still lots more work to be done. They have the certainty they're leaving now, but how are businesses in London preparing themselves for, this transition period and even beyond?
Businesses certainly have a lot of questions, and 3.5 years on from when we broadcast from here in Parliament Square for Channel News Asia, we are back as Britain prepares to leave the European Union. This is where later on Leave supporters will celebrate. They will hold a party as Britain leaves the EU to celebrate that moment when Brexit is finally happening. But you can also see here in Parliament Square behind me, there are pro-Remain supporters as well. They say they'll campaign for Britain one day to rejoin the European Union. But returning to that idea about what businesses feel about all of this, I'm joined by Alan Simpson from the London Trade and Investment Agency, London and Partners. Alan, what are businesses saying to you about where we find ourselves? They know what the UK and trading arrangements look like on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They don't know what they look like next year. Is there still a large amount of uncertainty?
I don't think so, because of the planning that's gone into this to date will continue to for the rest of the year. There's only so much governments can do. Ultimately, businesses need to prepare themselves. They've done that exceptionally well, and now they're going to see the rewards.
And if you're an Asian investor or business person watching on, what's your message to them about London as a place to invest?
I would say that London is open. Investment into London is growing, particularly from China. We are increasingly seeing ourselves as part of a much more diverse network of businesses, academics, tourists and cultural visitors as well. And I hope that they'll continue to back us.
And what about immigration, visas and so on after Brexit takes place, but also in a future trading arrangement with the European Union? What will Britain look like in terms of attracting skill from abroad?
I hope it'll look really strong, and not just for people coming here to work, but of course to study. And I think if we can attract students, make the visa process for students really simple, then of course they'll go back to China, set up a business, come here 15 years later and bring their business here.
A lot is said often about the challenges of Brexit, how many Remain supporters say we'll be worse off leaving the European Union. Do you accept that, but also see opportunities?
We don't know what the impact of Brexit will be, but of course it's only one trend. The world is moving east, the world is moving to the south, and London always needed to be prepared for that trend. I think what Brexit has done is given us the impetus to get that right, and I think we're doing it really well.
And what will that look like? What will London look like in 5, 10, 20 years' time after Brexit? Do you see this as still a thriving city or one which might suffer?
No, I think really thriving, and it's back to partnerships. If we can create a world where London's universities are connected to China's universities, tourists are travelling here day in, day out, then I think we will find that actually we're in a stronger position in 10 years' time than we were 10 years ago.
Alan, thank you very much indeed. That's Alan Simpson from London's Trade and Investment Agency, London and Partners. An optimistic view from many here in the British capital. There are Remain supporters around the country who will tell you that Britain will be worse off once it leaves the European Union, but there are plenty here in Parliament Square who will have the other view as well, that there are opportunities ahead for the United Kingdom outside of the European Union.
And as your guest said, London is open for business. Many thanks, Ollie Barrett. Ollie was in London. Lucy Hough is in Brussels now. Lucy, when can we expect the business end to kicking in again between the EU and the UK returning to the negotiating table?
Well, the trade talks will begin on March the 3rd. They'll be led by the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, and Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister's Europe advisor, David Frost. Boris Johnson has, of course, ruled out any extension to the transition period, which is due to end on December the 31st of this year. A really difficult set of negotiations to begin on that date on March the 3rd. The key issues, I think, to look at will be fisheries, whether the EU will be able to still have access to the UK's fishing waters. Also, the EU's priority for a level playing field, which is EU alignment of the UK with EU regulations, both on goods but also on things like tax and environmental standards. We know that Boris Johnson wants to diverge from some EU regulations in order that he can strike trade deals with other countries. That is likely to be a key issue moving forward. We've heard from the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen today. She says that while she wants there to be a continued close relationship, any future arrangement will not have the same advantages as EU membership.
Celebrations and commiserations in the UK, but how do people in Europe feel about the advent of Brexit?
There is genuine sadness here in Brussels and in the European Union. The loss of one of its key members. It's a country that is its second largest economy, but also has made huge contributions in its over 4 decades of EU membership. The development of the single market, the development of the monetary union, even though, of course, Britain decided not eventually to join it. It has been a key contributor on defence and security. The EU really will feel the loss of this key player. There is genuine sadness, perhaps not at the loss of the Brexit Party and formerly UKIP, its disruptive tactics in the European Parliament, but this is a close relationship, one that has not always been easy in its 47 years, but certainly a hugely important contributor. Last night in the iconic Grand Place here in Brussels, we had the lights of the Union Jack on the buildings in the Grand Place. We had traditional British music being played. Certainly there is real sadness about Brexit today.
I can imagine. Lucy Hough in Brussels. Thank you so much for the perspective over there.